you please welcome to the stage Eileen, Leary!
Hi. Who likes mummies? Who wants to see pictures of mummies? The fuck is wrong with you? Seriously, think about mummies for a minute. Mummies are actually just Egyptians who lived, long, full lives thousands of years ago, were buried in accordance with their religious customs, and then hauled up unceremoniously out of their graves, put through very invasive procedures, and put in a museum for kids to look at. Bet you feel bad about sharing now. But how did we get here? It's kind of weird if you think about it. Like, mummies are people, which, seems like a pretty basic statement. But it doesn't seem like it from the way we treat them as, entertainment for kids, as, stock horror movie monsters, and as the subjects of the best children's TV show of all time. The best. I said it. Fight me. So, how did we get here? It's sort of a weird and long and complicated story that has to do with the weird systematic disembodiment of the mummy by European colonialism. And it starts, as all great stories do, with cannibalism. Anyway, here's a quick reminder that we treat mummies a little differently from other bodies, because this is controversial. This isn't. Food for thought. So, mummy medicine, corpse medicine, pretty much what it says on the horrifying tin. Corpse medicine was really popular in early modern Europe, which means that early modern Europeans were cannibals, which, yes, is the same people who would invade other people's countries and call them savages. Projecting. So, mummy medicine, what you would do is you would take a mummy. The gooier, the better, honestly. You would scrape the black ooze off of it. Fun fact, Europeans thought it was pitch. It wasn't. The word for mummy comes from the word mumia, which means pitch. So you take the black corpse ooze, you prepare it, and then, in the hopes of curing your internal bleeding or whatever it was you had going on, you would ingest it. And then, people started thinking, God, so eating people, they didn't have any moral concerns. They were like, no, this is fine, morally. But it might be giving us plague. But anyway, they stopped. And then everyone came to their senses, and then no one used mummies as raw materials anymore. You sweet summer children, you believed me for a second. No, they kept doing this shit for centuries. One thing they liked to do was take the linen wrappings off of mummies and recycle it into paper. I'd like to take a moment to appreciate the face of the woman who knows she's touching books made out of dead people. Her smile is so joyous. I think I'm in love. Another thing they liked to do was grind up some mummies, right, and turn it into paint. Mummy brown. Now with more mummies. Not everyone was down with the brown, because there was one pre-Raphaelite painter, Edward Burne-Jones, who, upon figuring out what mummy brown was made of, got really upset and had a tiny backyard funeral for the paint tube. Aww. But pretty much everyone else knew what it was made of and was totally fucking fine with it, so, that was weird. So, eventually people stopped using mummies as raw materials so much, but again, not for any moral reasons, just because people were interested in using them for science. Yeah, for science has never been used to justify anything bad. Ooh. So usually you'd be able to go to a market, any market in Egypt, and you'd just be able to buy mummies. Which one's the mummy? Can you see? That dude looks super upset. I don't blame him. I'd be too if I had to sell mummies all day. And eventually scientists and amateurs with interest in science and private collectors would buy these mummies. What are private collectors going to do with mummies? Is it gross? It's gross. So what they would do is they'd take them, they'd have them in their homes, and sometimes they would have parties to examine the mummies. And one guy from 1798, he writes a letter about how he went to London and it was so fucking cool because one of his friends invited him over to dissect a baby. Gross as hell. Not uncommon. So, but examining mummies was pretty much only for rich people until T.J. Pettigrew. I like to call him Thomas Joseph Pettigrew. I like to call him TJP. And I like to call him that because as a Victorian gentleman, Thomas Joseph Pettigrew would have hated informality almost as much as I hate him. Pettigrew was a pretty creepy fuck, just like the guy he is obviously named after. And so what young Pettigrew would do is he would go and he would take corpses from the people who died at the workhouse down the street. And people knew this was going on, and they were so fucking creeped out. This one lady wrote a letter to her friends and was like, no matter what, when I die, do not let the young weirdo down the street get my body. But he did. After a career as a failed surgeon, I wonder why, Pettigrew took his corpse hobby and turned it into a successful career, a feat of which I am weirdly jealous. Anyone else? Any other historian? I am a little bit. Anyway, so what Pettigrew would do is he would have mummy unrollings, mummy demonstrations. Oh, yeah, he would have them publicly. The first one, 1834, was such a big deal that fucking everybody tried to come. Most people couldn't get in. At the door, the Bishop of London and the Archbishop of Canterbury were turned away for lack of room. And presumably, lack of street cred. So what they would do at these unwrappings is they would, take the mummy and try and get through the crunchy, corpsey wrapper through any means necessary. They would hack into it, saw into it, hammer and chisel into that shit, and they would find amulets and pass them around. People could take them home like Christmas cracker things. Is that what you do with Christmas crackers? I don't know. But they would do that. They would cut off pieces of wrappings and, pass it around, talk about the smell, have a little laugh. And these were popular for like decades. Eventually other people started taking them over, but they were the height of London society for a long-ass time. Eventually, they started falling out of favor, and people started getting interested in mummies in a really special way. In the 1870s and 1880s, people got really, really into romance, mummy romance. And this wasn't just like Penny Dreadful stuff. No, Bram Stoker, Arthur Conan Doyle would write these romances where hot mummy ladies would come back to life and fall in love with our white man protagonist. Yes. Everyone loved this shit. They went bananas. And they were huge on it for a really long time. But eventually the craze was over, So looking at this stuff, you tend to wonder, the unwrapping, the sexualization, just the general weirdness. What were Victorians doing? What were they thinking? And there's an 1880s article that gives us a really good idea. This guy, Francis Brown, wrote this article about an archaeologist who uncovered a tomb. Dude is practically jizzing himself with admiration when he says that Gaston Maspero had done such a great favor for, actual quote, these mummies upon whose faces the light of the 19th century was allowed to shine. Yeah, so it's pretty weird. We think about this stuff and we're like, wow, that's really weird. That's such a weird Victorian quirk. Those funny Victorians. No. I mean, there's a lot of controversy nowadays with ethics of displaying things in museums, and people talk about it, but they don't talk about mummies. Mummies, so far, have remained pretty much untouched. Well, I say untouched. It's still going. Mummy porn. That's a thing. That happened. 8 of you have a new fetish. I know which 8. And, I don't say this to make you feel bad about, the way you perceived mummies up till now, although it does raise some weird questions, like, Was my grandma who took me to the British Museum as a kid a racist? Did my grandfather jack off to this? But, you know, to sort of put away that image, I have something to end with that's a little more, actually kind of darling. When I started talking about my research last year, some people got really excited, and one person got so excited about my research that they wrote a fan fiction about it. Fan fiction about my dissertation. Fuck all of you. Here it is, courtesy of Tumblr user Tyrant is Terror. The mummy rises from the tomb, looking for his lost love, and finds some Victorian bastard crushing her hand into dust and snorting it like cocaine to cure his bum knee. That was my wife! The mummy howled, in ancient Egyptian. The Victorian merely laughs and, I don't know, thinks about repressing his sexual urges or something. Then, the mummy kills him. Thank you so much.
Eileen, Leary, ladies and gentlemen!